I have several let's not meet stories rolling around in my head. I think today I'm ready to tell the story of my stalker. To preface this, I know there are a lot worse stalker stories out there. And mine might be pretty mild, but it still terrified me and haunts me today, nearly 10 years later. It was my first real full-time job after college. I went to school for art, but the job was basically an admin, along with a bunch of random responsibilities. At least once a week, I worked in the warehouse, counting and organizing inventory. A coworker of mine started hanging around and seemed like he wanted to be friends. He was very helpful with the job. Having been there for a while and knowing the ins and outs of the company. His name was Tim. He was 46, lived in his mom's basement, and never been married. He had a cat he talked about often and claimed he used to be a Hell's Angel. He drove 18-wheelers and thought they were super cool. He started offering to smoke me out on lunch breaks, which I would accept because duh. Then he started buying me lunch, stating, "My friend did this for me when I was your age. I'm just paying it forward. One day, you can help someone else when you have the money to spend on them." He knew all the local places to eat and would choose a place, suggesting that I should try. It was a mistake to ever accept anything from him, but I'm a foodie, and he introduced me to things like Cuban espresso and burger buffets, adding excitement to my otherwise monotonous workday. Around that time, our friend's cat had several kittens. One of them was a beautiful tortie, Penny, that I knew Tim would love, so I fostered her for a bit until he decided he wanted her, and he came over to pick her up. She got along with his other cat and was super sweet. He loved her and would send me pictures of her and them together all the time. We had him over, my boyfriend and I, a few times over a period of about a year. He told the same stories over and over again, but we tolerated him because we thought he was lonely. I made him a dating profile because he often spoke about how he wants to meet the one, etc., but he rejected every single woman he matched with. He would pick their appearance apart on beautiful women who were in his age group, even some much younger. Now, when I say Tim is an unattractive man, please trust. He was gross, overweight, and sweaty. He had thick, coarse black hair and a huge gap in his incisors that would suck spit through after he laughed, licking his teeth. He had giant pores and moles, and he was just old. We did have many enjoyable conversations, but I started to get the creepy vibes. For my birthday that year, he bought me a first edition of my favorite book. After I had told them this story about how I lost my mass produce copy, I had exchanged favorite books with a friend who ended up losing my favorite book. Her book was Twilight, which I hated. He also bought me a necklace that was for cancer survivors, which was very sweet, but also kinda really personal and awkward, but still seemed innocent though. He would show up with a case of beer, knocking on the door unexpectedly. We tried to be hospitable, but it started getting annoying. However, I felt bad for him, and he was always so overly nice and helpful at work, and I felt bad turning him away. One day after we had lunch, while I was sitting in his truck in our work parking lot, he told me he thought I was the one. I reminded him about my boyfriend, and he said, "No, he's not right for you. You're supposed to be with me." "No, Tim, you know I care about you as a friend, but I'm not interested in anything with you like that. You're making me very uncomfortable. I love you. I can take care of you. Think of all I can do for you. I have a number amount in savings. Please stop. This is getting weird. I don't like you like that at all. Please drop it." I got out of the truck and shut the door. The storm was brewing. After he confessed his love to me, I told my husband, then boyfriend, everything. He had warned me, and he reminded me how he called it. How he always knew this would have happened, that Tim's creepy. That I shouldn't have accepted all the food and gifts, etc. He was totally right, and I felt sick. I started putting distance between Tim and I. While still being kind and sociable at work, I told my husband everything. Tim would call me over and over again, even though I always ignored his call. Until one night, we got sick of it, and I answered the phone and told him to stop calling me. He was crying and begging me to talk to him. My boyfriend took the phone and told him to fuck off and hung up. That's when the threats started. He would leave voicemails about he couldn't stand to look at Penny and how he was going to take her to the woods and kill her, or he would just let her free. She would be eaten by wild animals since she was still so small. He said she reminded him of me and that he hated her as much as he hated me, that he wanted to bash her brains in. I started to call in to work sick. I didn't want to see him. He ignored me deliberately, which I appreciated. He wouldn't look at me, but acted normal besides his sudden coldness towards me. Seeing him was awful. I ended up getting laid off. Tim had other coworkers try to contact me on his behalf. People reaching out, telling me I need to call him, that he's hurt by my sudden leaving. I would get calls from random phone numbers in my area, and it would be Tim. I would hang up as soon as I heard him say hello. I changed my number. We moved across the country. It was maybe a year later. He somehow found my new number and called again, leaving this huge voicemail. He said he found the one, but also he was dying. I can't remember how or why he was dying. It's all hazy now. But he needed this innovative technology or surgery that happened to be only available in my town, in my state 1,000 miles away from him, where he lived and he worked together a year before. He wanted to meet up. It was all such a coincidence, and he was so excited to catch up and introduce me to his pregnant fiancée. He also needed my address. At this time, I was pregnant with my first and only child. Tim said his fiancée was pregnant too, that we would be parents at the same time. At that moment, I blocked every single person I had ever known from the town on Facebook. Every single person that knew Tim, that he could have gotten information from. I changed my phone number again. The nightmare started of him showing up in the middle of the night, having somehow found us, of him carrying a case of beer, banging on the door, sucking spit through his teeth. I felt like he wanted to find me so he could get back at me somehow. I don't know if any of his story was true or what his plans were. Anyways, F this dude. I live in Finland, so excuse for any grammatical errors I might have made. This is also my first one, so excuse me if this sounds a bit weird. It was an icy evening in 2017, shortly after my 15th birthday. I was hanging out with one of my friends after school, and we decided just to take a walk around the general area. It took longer than we thought to just part ways, so by the time that happened, it was about 6 in the evening. We usually left school around 2:45 p.m. It was the middle of the winter in Finland and very dark outside, and I didn't want my parents to be concerned. The sun had set particularly early on that day, and the surrounding area had turned a very bitter, biting cold, and the leftover snow from that day created a bright, beautiful glow. This was some time after I learned to actually walk to school on my own, and I was used to going home fairly late, so I was never really scared of going that distance. My school was about half an hour away from my home, and being by myself in the evening. So I hopped onto a bus, and it was about 6:15 to 6:30 when I finally got off the bus at my stop. In only a few minutes' time, I ended up in an intersection between the road I was on and the quiet road my house was on. But as soon as I walked across to the end of my road and make the first turn, I stopped right in my tracks, as I saw a woman standing in my path, staring me straight into the eyes. She was about my height, around 5'8", maybe even a bit taller. Had long, thick, jet black hair. Was whip thin and ghostly pale in both skin and cloth clad in a rather simple dress. Her eyes were empty and gray. She did not say a word. She just shifted around for a second looking back, debating whether or not I should just pass or if I should be rude. If I turned around to see if anyone else was close by and could pass by her safely, but nobody else was around. She also stood next to a house with an open and dilapidated gate entrance. So I also perhaps wondered for a moment if she had resided there, and if it would be rude to almost intrude in her space. All became quiet around us, and I was wondering in that moment what to do. I sort of lifted my hand a little bit, not really intending anything by that, and to my surprise, she responded by lifting her own long, thin hands and smiling a little bit. She started walking towards me, and I turned around, briskly walking back to the intersection. For a second, I thought I just imagined the whole thing, but then I saw the woman again, still just staring, but this time having turned towards the opposite sidewalk away from me, just staring into the sky. I determined at this point that it was safe to walk past, but I noticed that she sort of craned her head to my side ever slightly as I walked past. I started to quicken my pace a little bit as I approached the next turn and looked back to see her staring once again. This happened about a year ago, just after the start of the first lockdown in the UK. I am 22 female, living in a rural village in the south of England, and the only roads in and out of the village are really long, unpaved, unlit, and empty 95% of the time. I walk along these roads for my daily exercise, and the one where this happened is my favorite, as it has a ford crossing that cars have to drive through. The crossing turns into a river, which I sit by, read next to, etc. After sitting there for a bit and listening to a podcast episode one morning, I decided to start walking home around 10 a.m. After a minute after I started walking, a red SUV with 2 men and 2 women inside go past me, heading in the opposite direction. I didn't pay any mind. Loads of farmers, horse riders have SUVs out here, so it's not uncommon to see them. I keep walking maybe 15 seconds before getting a really weird feeling that I had to check behind me. I turned around and see that same SUV has parked on the side of the road. The 2 women and one of the men are stood by the car, which now has its boot open, and the other guy is walking on the same side of the road as me, about 30 meters behind. He's looking straight at me. I automatically speed up, and after a few seconds, I turn to see that he is even closer and walking even faster. I know I won't be able to outrun him, and the chance of someone else coming along to help are basically nil. The only thing I can think to do is call my friend and talk loudly to try and put him off. The first time I call, she doesn't pick up, and I'm tempted just to pretend I'm on the phone. Better than nothing, right? Thankfully, she picks up on the first ring of the second attempt, but she launches into a long rant about why she overslept and how mad she is that she missed her alarm, and she doesn't really give me a chance to speak. I have to cut her off mid-sentence and be like, "Hey dude, yeah, just calling to tell you what my plans are for the day. I have so many things to do," super loudly, and I turn my head to the side so that the guy can see my earphones and is aware that someone else is listening. After turning my head, I keep walking. I don't look back until I'm quite a bit ahead of where I was. Fortunately, the man is no longer following me, and I can't see the car. I breathe a huge sigh of relief and apologize to my friend for cutting her off, letting her know what just had happened. I still don't know if this encounter was anything sinister. Maybe they just broke down and needed a hand, but I'm glad I didn't find out. When I was around 9, my mom and I lived in this apartment buildings close to the college in my town. The apartment setup was 2 long buildings with a parking lot in the middle of them, and at the end of the parking lot was a house, a little wooded area, and the trash. I would always go play out in the woods or behind the building. There was this house next to the wooded area, but it was fenced in. It always kind of creeped me out because I couldn't tell if anyone was living there at all. I would come out here a lot since I didn't really have much to do at home. One day I was playing and I saw a pink square piece of paper underneath a rock, and for some reason I decided to pick it up. On the paper there was a cutout pictures of porn, and there were little designs and words like hardcore, bondage, etc. I was kind of shocked and I felt really weird about it, so I just put it back. I didn't go back out there for a while because I was creeped out, but I didn't tell my mom. Once I kind of forgot about it, I went back out one day and found another one right next to the first one with all the same stuff. I always wondered if someone was watching me and put them there, or if I just happened to find it, but it has always weirded me out quite a bit.